All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're taking aim at an absolutely massive goal. For everyone tuning in, and especially for all my American viewers out there grinding day in and day out to build some real, lasting wealth, we are going to demystify the ultimate American financial dream. I'm talking about living entirely off dividend income. So we're going to break down the actual math, the specific assets, and the realistic timelines you need to build an income machine that literally pays you while you sleep. Let's just dive right in.
Just imagine generating a $5,000 a month paycheck. That's 60 grand a year, and it requires absolutely zero active work. No clocking in, no dealing with a boss. Just pure passive cash flow coming straight through the door from dividend stocks. You know, you can use it to pay your bills, fund your lifestyle, or just totally secure your retirement. It's the goal so many of us are chasing. But how do you actually get there?
Well, here's the kind of harsh reality. If you want that $5K a month starting tomorrow, and you want to do it safely with a diversified, lower-risk ETF like SCHD, which yields about 3.4% right now, you're going to need a lump sum of roughly $1.76 million deployed today. Yeah, you heard that right. Over $1.7 million bucks. For most of us, that number isn't just big, it's a massive, intimidating roadblock. Think of the traditional 4% rule. You know, the one created by William Bengen back in '94, as this crazy steep mountain to climb. To safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio to get that 60 grand a year, you need at least $1.5 million invested in a mix of stocks and bonds. It is just an incredible hurdle, especially if you're starting from scratch. So that brings us to the crucial question. If you don't have $1.7 million just sitting in your checking account right now, how on earth are you supposed to pull this off? Do you just throw in the towel? Absolutely not. There are real actionable pathways that regular investors use to bypass that giant initial requirement. But, you know, they do require understanding a few key financial levers. Now, let's say you have a slightly higher risk tolerance, and you still want that $5,000 a month right now. You can actually lower that capital requirement down to roughly $700,000. How? Well, by chasing higher-yielding assets that pay around 8.4% or more. Instead of dividing your $60,000 goal by that conservative 3.4%, you divide it by 8.4%. Mathematically, boom, you suddenly only need about 40% of the original capital.
But hey, there's always a trade-off, right? There's a pretty stark contrast between a high-yield approach and a dividend growth approach. High-yield funds like covered call ETFs, think QYLD or JEPI, they can pay 8 to 12% today by systematically selling options. The catch is they effectively cap your portfolio's upside when the market rallies. On the flip side, a dividend growth ETF like SCHD only pays about 3.4% right now, but it holds these really high-quality companies that historically grow their payouts by 10 to 12% a year. Over a decade, that usually means superior total returns.
You really have to remember that yield is never free. If you're reaching for that 8 or 12% just to shrink your target down to $700K, you are taking on hidden risks. For example, business development companies, or BDCs. They have great yields, but they lend to smaller, riskier businesses that could definitely default. And like we said, covered call strategies sacrifice capital appreciation. Plus, if you concentrate too much on high yield, you lose diversification. Rising interest rates can squeeze profit margins, and you're just way more vulnerable to dividend cuts when the economy takes a hit. Okay, so if $1.7 million is way too much and 700 grand in high yield is too risky or, frankly, still out of reach, what's the actual secret? Well, it's right here. Yield on cost. Basically, this is your current dividend income divided by your original purchase price. Honestly, this is the absolute magic of dividend investing. If you lock in shares today and that company keeps growing its dividend year after year, your personal yield on that original investment just goes up and up and up. Now, to activate that yield on cost magic, you need to build what we call a dividend snowball. And that relies on 4 mechanical pillars firing on all cylinders. First up is time. You gotta have patience in the market. Second is your risk tolerance, finding that balance between safe, lower yields and riskier high yields. Third is dividend reinvestment, often called DRIP, where literally every penny paid out automatically buys you more shares. And finally, dividend growth, putting your money in companies that organically increase their payouts. When you put those 4 pillars together, the math just completely transforms. If you deploy $200,000 today, reinvest every single dividend, rely on organic dividend growth, and just wait, say 10 to 15 years while you keep working, that $200K can actually grow to produce that exact same $5,000 a month in passive income. You are drastically lowering your out-of-pocket capital requirement just by letting time and compounding do the heavy lifting for you.
This 10 to 15-year window is what we call the reinvestment phase. And here is the golden rule. During this time, you do not touch the cash. Every time a dividend hits your account, it needs to automatically buy more shares of whatever paid it. You shouldn't even have to think about it or log in to do it manually. Setting up that automated system creates this incredible compounding loop that just runs in the background, constantly accelerating the growth of your future paycheck.
If we look at a 20-year timeline, this compounding loop seriously goes into overdrive. Even if you're starting with just $5 a day, which is basically the cost of a fancy coffee, it grows exponentially. By year 10, you've put in around 18 grand. But your portfolio? It might be worth over $33,000. By year 20, you've contributed $36,000. But thanks to that reinvestment and growth, the portfolio can project way past $163,000. Eventually, you hit this crossover point where your dividends are actually buying more shares than your daily deposits are. It's awesome.
Building your income machine. Let's shift gears and look at how we actually construct this portfolio. A truly robust income machine has to be diversified. For example, you might include realty income, ticker O. They're a real estate investment trust that literally trademarked the phrase the monthly dividend company, and they're yielding nearly 5%. Then you balance that out with a dividend aristocrat like Genuine Parts, ticker GPC, which has increased its dividend for an insane 69 consecutive years. After that, you might carefully blend in a high-quality BDC, like Main Street Capital for a 6% yield, or maybe a covered call ETF like JPI just to boost your current income. The whole game is about mixing yield with structural safety. Now hold up, because before you buy a single share, we absolutely have to talk about taxes. If your dividends are being treated like an all-you-can-eat buffet by the IRS, your snowball is going to melt way before it can grow. Generally speaking, tax-inefficient, high-yield assets like REITs and BDCs, those belong in tax-advantaged retirement accounts. Meanwhile, assets that pay qualified dividends, which get taxed at those much lower long-term capital gains rates, those are fine to keep in your standard taxable brokerage accounts. You always want to optimize your tax efficiency.
So, to wrap up our explainer today, here's your realistic roadmap. Look, building $5,000 a month in dividends, it's a 15 to 20-year marathon, okay? Not a get-rich-quick, stock-picking sprint. You really have to expect to grind at your day job for that active income while this passive engine slowly builds up in the background. But if there's one single takeaway here, it's this. Please, do not let that initial $1.7 million math scare you out of starting. Let time, reinvestment, and yield on cost do the heavy lifting for you.
The math is completely proven. The assets are out there, and the strategy is crystal clear. Honestly, the only variable left in this equation is you. Reaching true financial independence is tough. It requires a really high savings rate and just an immense amount of dedication to the grind. So, are you ready to start that 15-year grind? Thank you so much for hanging out with me for this explainer today. If you found this breakdown valuable and you want to keep mastering your financial future, please like, share, follow, and leave a comment right here on my channel, US FinOx. Your engagement is literally what helps me bring more of these deep dive explainers straight to you. So get out there, keep building that snowball, and I will catch you in the next one.